Welcome to Planet People, a podcast that aims to inspire curiosity and cultivate a deeper connection with the natural world. I'm Natalie Jane, a conservation biologist, eco-communicator, and the host of this podcast series. And I am thrilled to be sharing stories with you that highlight the beauty and importance of protecting our planet's wildlife. Hello, wonderful listeners, and welcome to Planet People. I am beyond thrilled to have you all listening in today as we explore the founding principles that make Planet People truly special. So what are some founding principles here at Planet People? And what approaches do we use to understand conservation? One such approach is community-based conservation. Community-based conservation takes inspiration from Dr. Jane Goodall and her TACAR approach, which stands for Take Care. And it is a community-led effort in conservation management and creating sustainable communities that drive natural resources management while also taking care of themselves and the world around them. Community-based conservation is, I believe, a necessary approach to understanding how we can better manage natural resources through a bottom-up approach. A bottom-up approach means that we are listening to the voices of the local people, but more than just listening, we are implementing their ideas and their local knowledge on how we can better manage natural resources. Community-based conservation, as I see it, has been a founding principle because I've been able to relate it to my own home of La Jolla, California, to better understand a human-wildlife conflict that has been ongoing for several decades. This conflict involves humans and pinnipeds. Pinnipeds meaning the harbor seal and the California sea lion. Specifically, for the context of this episode, we'll be focusing on the California sea lion and how there has been ongoing coexistence issues in Jolla Cove. For the last decade, we have seen encroachment on wildlife spaces, especially along the coast in Southern California, and that is definitely happening here in La Jolla. And if you are on social media, then you have probably seen viral videos of sea lions charging the beach, and it's very clear that they are fighting back against human presence. In my opinion, though, I think that this is a much greater issue than a pinniped population problem, which a lot of people, specifically folks that live in La Jolla zip code, seem to believe that it's a pinniped problem and that we need to remove them from their environment due to the odor and increasing fecal matter in the ocean. So we'll break this down a little bit further in terms of the different perspectives on this conflict and this human-wildlife coexistence piece. But for right now, I think it's important to address that it's not just a pinniped problem. And that's why I believe the community-based conservation approach can be holistic in breaking down how this is not just a pinniped and human-wildlife coexistence issue. This is a greater natural resources management problem. Specifically, we are seeing, to describe the conflict or a little bit further, it's much broader than pinnipeds, meaning that I believe there are many other abiotic and biotic resources affected. Abiotic meaning non-living and biotic meaning living. So what are some of these other resources that are affected from increasing encroachment from humans? In terms of biotic resources, other than the sea lions, we know that the Brandt's cormorant has been nesting on La Jolla Cove cliffside since the 1930s. And in my opinion, if you ask me, they are the true locals. Other birds that we are seeing nesting in this area are western gulls, and then we also have several pairs of black oyster catchers. I'm unsure if they're nesting here, but they still use the cove and other rocky coastal areas along the coastal walk in La Jolla to feed on mussels and other bivalves. So it's really a very rich in biodiversity, the Jolla Cove. It's the gem of California for obvious reasons, and we have so many other species that come through this area, including the California gray pelican, western snowy plovers, semi-palmated plovers. The list goes on. Additionally, the abiotic resources that are affected are the bluffside habitat, where we are seeing many people use illegal gates that shouldn't be accessible to invade these nesting areas on the bluff sides in La Jolla, which is causing erosion and worsening the quality of the nesting bird habitat, which we don't want. So to break this down, we are certain that several biotic and abiotic resources are affected due to human encroachment in La Jolla Cove. I want to tailor this in to specific geographic ranges in La Jolla, specifically Point La Jolla, where the sea lions haul out to rest and breed. And another area that I want to focus on is Goldfish Point and the illegal access of Brockton Gate. So Brockton Gate is where people can basically go out onto the bluffside habitat and impact the Brandt's cormorant and other nesting birds, as well as sea lions. So we have some illegal gate access issues that I believe are a problem for allowing this disturbance to wildlife. And then Point La Jolla is where the sea lions haul out, and there is unpermitted stairway access that should not be there. So I hope I've painted a picture for you of how diverse La Jolla Cove is and where there's some conflict in terms of humans intruding on abiotic and biotic resources. So now that I've identified the historical context of this area and this coexistence problem, I want to break down further how community-based conservation can play a pivotal role in making a real-time difference in La Jolla Cove. And I first want to start by sharing the success that we've seen using community-based conservation. For example, several NGOs that are involved, which I will break down further later in this episode, are the San Diego Seal Society and the San Diego Audubon Society, which I'm very happy to have volunteered with to better understand how I can help this issue. And I believe that's through communicating to people like you about the problem. So these NGOs have created a lot of awareness around the issue, and specifically the Seal Society has done an incredible job of advocating to policymakers, specifically the California Coastal Commission, about the issue in terms of how the sea lions are impacted, and quite literally showing the Coastal Commission evidence, video-based evidence of disturbance from humans. And I mean kicking, throwing sand, petting, you name it. The disturbance is very disrespectful, and people are continuing to ignore the signs that are there and are technically breaking the law, which is the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which states that you cannot even come in within 50 feet of a marine mammal, let alone pet them and take a selfie with them. So anyways, I digress. The Seal Society advocates for the protection of the sea lions, and the power of community-based conservation in this context is that we have seen success due to a 6-month seasonal closure of Point La Jolla, which lasts from May through October, which is the breeding season for sea lions. Their primary, most common date, actually, where the most sea lions are born at Point La Jolla is June 15th, which is pretty incredible because you can see a lot of live births. Please do so respectfully. And now we can do that due to the seasonal closure, which prevents people from going down onto the bluffside habitat and petting the sea lions. So far, so good. We are making progress. This is something worthy of celebrating, this 6-month closure, because it demonstrates the power that can happen when we work together and speak to policymakers about the change that we want to see done on the local level, which is what we have done. I've spoken at public comments during the Coastal Commission meetings, which happen once a month, and they have been persuaded by us to follow through with the 6-month closure. This is great news, and I am stoked on this, but we still have more work to do. And that's why I'm sharing all of this information on the podcast today, so we can further analyze how this conflict has arisen and how we can continue to use community-based conservation as a solution. I want to break it down even further than just community-based conservation, though. Through a social ecological systems approach, we can better analyze the dynamic factors that have led to the lack of protection and conservation efforts that are continuing today.
We are going to take a short break from this conflict story to share some resources about how to get involved with the sea lion and natural resources issue. So if you live in Southern California and you feel fired up about people disturbing sea lions and nesting bird species in Jolla Cove, then this call to action is for you. If you live in San Diego or would like to get involved as a Southern California resident, you can join the San Diego Seal Society Sierra Club chapter, which focuses on protecting sea lions in San Diego County. Additionally, there are other natural resources that are impacted by human disturbance, such as the nesting branch cormorants, California gray pelicans, black oyster catchers, and many other different species of shorebirds that call La Jolla Cove home. We need to protect them too. And if you are interested in helping from the avian side of conservation, then you can check out the San Diego Audubon chapter. Or you can contact me directly through my Instagram DMs or my email. I'm happy to help get you involved if you live in Southern California or San Diego and would like to make a difference in protecting your local environment.
So for the second half of the episode, we'll discuss how community-based conservation can be used as an approach within a social ecological framework. Let's first define what social ecology is, because the point of this episode is not to be filled with jargon and scientific terms that people may be confused by, because I know I was confused before I started learning about it. So I hope that for this second half, I can do a good job of breaking down what social ecology means and how it can be really useful in understanding this conflict that's been ongoing for so long. So what is social ecology? Social ecology is a multi-feedback loop between social and ecological systems. I know it sounds obvious, right? But you have your social groups, which are the human groups involved that influence the outcomes due to our interactions with the natural world, with any environment. So I want to apply this Seth approach to breaking down all of the groups and the social factors that are affected in La Jolla Cove. We've already explained the ecological factors, the abiotic and biotic resources, and we've also already identified a social group, which are the people that like to recreate in La Jolla. And I've also identified the NGOs. And the Coastal Commission. Those three groups alone are their separate interest group. And each interest group, which is the social component in the social ecological system, they each have their own value. And this influences the protection of the environment and how we interact with it. Specifically, the NGOs involved, the San Diego Seal Society and the San Diego Audubon Society. We also have another NGO, the San Diego Freediving Association. Two of these interest groups, the Audubon Society and Seal Society, have a biophiliac ethos, which focuses on the intrinsic value and worth of nature for simply existing in its own right. We don't need a use out of the environment, whereas the San Diego Freedivers, their ethos is more focused on anthropocentric needs. How can we use the environment to benefit us? That's the difference. The biophiliacs want to preserve the environment simply because of the intrinsic worth that nature holds just for simply existing. We don't need to use anything to gain value from nature. Whereas the anthropocentric, anthro, being a very important Latin word here, stands for human. Anthropology, the study of humans. Anthropocentric, a human-centered focus and use of the environment, which we continue to see through other interest groups. The other social group are the locals and the visitors and the tourists that all come here, come to La Jolla or live here to recreate. Their value influences how public groups manage natural resources. Essentially, humans that use La Jolla to go to the beach, go in the ocean, whatever it might be, they are influencing how we interact and protect the environment. And they use it, and that provides an economic revenue for businesses in La Jolla Cove. And so it can be very hard to balance the needs of all stakeholders because we all have different needs for the environment. One group wants to protect it, one group wants to use it and recreate, etc. And then the third interest groups are your political entities, which are the California Coastal Commission and the La Jolla Parks and Rec Board, which are opposed to a full year closure. And that is the next step that I'll talk to you about shortly. So as you can imagine, all of these different value systems make it quite complicated to balance each stakeholder interest so that everybody is happy. That's sort of the crux of social ecology. It aims to examine all the different values that influence our interaction with the environment, or lack of interaction in terms of being a biophiliac, right? Because we're just there to observe and appreciate. Some people are there to use, etc. That being said, these political entities play a major role in acting as the middleman to balance the needs of the differing stakeholders. The California Coastal Commission is pro-protecting the environment because of the disturbing video evidence of people interacting with sea lions in a very dangerous capacity. As I've explained, kicking, petting, it's quite alarming. And La Jolla Parks and Rec, they don't believe that even a seasonal closure should be in existence because it's taking people's right away to use the ocean and recreate. Again, this is a very dynamic, complicated social ecological issue, and we have to find a balanced solution. So far, community-based conservation through this social ecological framework has proven successful. I repeat, has proven successful so far. With the 6-month closure, we can continue to push for a year-round closure, and here at Planet People, we are advocating for the strongest protections of natural resources. And this is not just a Pinniped issue. This is a broader natural resources management problem that needs to be addressed in terms of protecting the seabirds and the abiotic resources. We don't want to see erosion because we want to see the environment protected so we can continue to enjoy it and be present and not have it be overrun by encroachment and disturbance. That being said, we are making strides, and the California Coastal Commission has been supportive of a year-round closure of Point La Jolla to prevent any more interactions between sea lions and people. That being said, there is pushback from the other interest groups, including La Jolla Parks and Rec, San Diego Freedivers. But through this 6-month closure, we have seen a balanced solution. It's not just protecting the sea lions from humans during their breeding season. We have also, we being Seal Society and other entities that are protecting the environment, have created a historical access to a trail that leads down to Boomers Beach, which is adjacent to Point La Jolla. And that has allowed people to continue to use that trail and to swim in the ocean. I know that bodyboarders, that's a popular bodyboarding spot, and that trail is still open, even during the 6-month closure. So I believe that if we can continue to leave some trail space open while closing off the Point La Jolla area to prevent sea lion disturbance and nesting bird disturbance, then I don't see why we can't push for a year-round closure. And I definitely support that. And in my opinion, I think it's the only way to move forward to protect natural resources because, like I said, people are ignoring signs and it's disturbing. I hope that by sharing this story, you can see the power of community-based conservation and have a better understanding of why these human-wildlife coexistence issues can be quite complicated sometimes due to the many different interest groups who hold different value systems and influence how we interact and protect the natural world. So I'm proud and I'm inspired that community-based conservation is working, and we are a part of it here at Planet People. We support CBC and are so inspired by Dr. Jane Goodall's Takari approach to community-driven conservation solutions. I will leave you with this quote because it's one of my favorites, and it really summarizes just the power that we hold as individuals to come together and speak up for something that we care about. And I care so deeply about this. And before I end on a quote, I also want to share a short story. I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but just looking back 5 years ago when I came to California for the first time to visit San Diego, I distinctly remember going to La Jolla Cove, and I was so excited to see marine mammals from land for the very first time. I had just finished my biology minor, and I took marine mammalogy in school and was so inspired to work with them one day. And so I made a promise to myself that after visiting La Jolla Cove, I would come back to San Diego and try to protect the sea lions, because when I came to visit for the first time, I just remember feeling so distinctly disturbed by people taking selfies with the sea lions, touching them. And I just looked around and I was like, this can't be right. And I left because I felt uncomfortable. And I told myself from that day forward, this cannot happen if I live here. I will make sure that we try to protect these natural resources. And I've done everything I can to get involved since that point. So if that doesn't speak volume to you, that finding an issue that you're passionate about and getting involved with, like, you can make a difference if you want. And don't let anyone discourage you, because there's always room, and the environment needs your help, and Planet People needs your help, and we want you here and we need you here to make a difference and pursue a cause to protect the environment that you are passionate about and love protecting. I feel inspired. I hope you do too. And I will end with this quote now that I'm done with my short story tangent. But it is by Margaret J. Wheatley. And she states, "There is no power greater for change than a community discovering what it cares about."
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Planet People. We are thrilled to have you as part of our community of wildlifers who care about protecting the planet for future generations to enjoy. We hope that by listening to this podcast, you will be inspired to connect with nature and become a steward of the planet by getting involved and taking action with your local community conservation organization. Until next time, stay positive, Planet People. Thank you to my team here at Planet People. This episode was produced by Natalie Jane Sybil, Coral Carson, and Hugh Carr. Edited by Coral Carson. Theme song by Hugh Carr under the artist name Flama. Thank you, team.